by Amendment 44.
My Lords, the debate at the committee stage was extensive and it expressed concern that the wording of Clause 9, whether it intended to or not, was setting a dangerous precedent in which free speech, opinion, giving out leaflets could be criminalised in state-designated zones around hospitals and clinics. And some of us asked, where next? And I put in amendments to Clause 9. I'm really pleased that that debate led to people changing their minds because concerns were heard. I'd like to commend the noble Baroness Sugg, for listening. And Amendment 45 is undoubtedly a different amendment to that Clause 9 and, in my opinion, much improved from a civil liberties point of view. And we should therefore note that the proponents of Clause 9 now don't support Clause 9. Good. That's out of the way. However, in Amendment 45, I wanted to make reference to one problem I've got. Well, I've got several problems, but one I will concentrate on at this time is 1A, which is the idea that there should be no attempt to influence any person's decision to access the provisions of abortion services. And influencing has been discussed here this evening in quite legalistic and appropriately legalistic terms. That's important. I wanted to just bring a different perspective. I think that it's very dangerous to suggest that influencing someone to change their minds in terms of a decision made should be against the law in almost, in any circumstances. Now, this is not the same as suggesting that I think that the appropriate place to have, as somebody said, the free speech debate on abortion is outside an abortion clinic. I mean, I organise a festival called the Battle of Ideas, but I don't think that we should be having a battle of ideas outside an abortion clinic when somebody's trying to access health. That's not the basis on which I think free speech is threatened by these buffer zones going national, because I think it is. Many women are very firm and clear and have made a rational decision that they want an abortion. They've given a lot of time to that decision. They won't be deterred. In fact, I don't think they'll be deterred even by anti-abortion vigils going on, because they know what they want to do. They go in. It's a bit distressing, but they go in. Good luck to them. However, some women may be unsure, toing and froing, and they should be and must be free to change their mind at any time, in any direction, up until either termination or what have you. You see, it's not coercive if you think again. If a woman is trying to work out, should I or should I have a termination, if you go and see a counsellor at BPAS or at Mary Stopes Clinic and they're not sure, and then somebody actually tries to influence them, not in one way or another, but gets them to talk it through and think about it, then a woman might then leave that counselling service and say, I've thought about it now, I've made my mind up, I'm going to have a termination. That's a woman's moral autonomy. We assume she's not coerced in that situation. I just don't want us to be in a situation where a woman who's maybe not sure, still thinking about it even as she's going in for a termination, if she gets given a leaflet and then says in her own defence, I've changed my mind, there maybe is an option of getting some practical support for pregnancy, whatever the reason is, then that's their choice. And the point is, I'm pro-choice. And I don't want us to undermine women's agency in our enthusiasm to support laws presented as protecting women. I don't think it's the basis on which we should legislate in terms of worrying about how women feel that they're being, or worrying that about women and how they feel either, or being distressed. But I think influence is something we should protect. I want to influence you. Now might be failing because you've got the capacity to listen, make a decision. Influencing is the basis of democracy, and we should be careful about saying we shouldn't be allowed to influence because a bill in Parliament said don't influence in that bit of the country. So I consider these vigils to be insensitive and a nuisance, by the way. I disagree with the anti-abortionists outside. I think that abortion is a woman's right to choose, a key right for women. I actually find the views of the people on these vigils offensive. I think their demonstrations are often objectionable and often distressing. But I do think that in a democracy we have to tolerate people who sometimes have views we find distressing or offensive. And earlier today, and this is what I wanted to emphasise, we've had lots of debates today about proportionate lawmaking and civil liberties, and everyone on this side of the House, to be honest, has made some fantastic speeches about that we have to be careful that we don't bring in laws and what the thresholds are. And actually, Amendment 1, which I spoke on and supported, suggested a much higher threshold for what we considered serious disruption. And I don't think these vigils, however obnoxious they are, would merit even the lower threshold that the government had. So basically what I'm saying is, I don't like them, but I don't think we need a law against them. I listened at committee too, as well as Baroness Sugg, and actually I changed my mind, because I was trying to amend Clause 9, but instead I don't think we should amend it at all. I think we should review whether we need nationally mandated buffer zones at all. So I don't want to amend the buffer zones. I want to stop, pause and look at the evidence. Throughout the committee debate, and since then, and I've also talked to lots of people on all sides, I've been inundated with my mates on the pro-choice side, with people on the other side. And what struck me is the variance of what I'm hearing. We've heard from a former police leader that he's gone around and there's a real problem. We heard from Baroness Sugg that this is escalating. There's American money, there's all sorts of things happening. I've heard that since Roe versus Wade, that there's quite lurid stories of quite aggressive things happening outside abortion clinics. And then I've also heard on the other side that all anyone's doing is silently praying, completely benign and so on. And the truth of the matter is that we have to say that if we're going to take such a dramatic change in changing the law from locally decided PSPOs where there's a particular problem to a national decision to carve up some of public space and say, no, you're not allowed to stand there when there might not even have been a problem, can't we at least base it on what's really going on? Public space protection orders are local remedies. I don't like that carving up of public space, but it's there and it's used. So what I'm adamant about is that when in 2018 the Home Office asked the same questions that we've been asking tonight, did an extensive review of vigils around abortion clinics, concluded that introducing national buffer zones would not be proportionate response, considering the experiences of the majority of hospitals and clinics, considering that majority of activities are more passive in nature, and then people who want this clause say, no, that's out of date, completely wrong, the 2018 review doesn't hold. Fine, let's have a 2023 review. That's all I'm saying. Let's find out. I'm particularly upset. One of the things I've been completely won over on is that actually the victims of these vigils are often not the women trying to access determination, but the staff, who actually day after day, once when you're going in for the determination might annoy you. I mean, I can't imagine anything more irritating than having to walk past it if you're trying to do your job of providing women's reproductive health care walking past. So let the review look at whether we can have a particular way of dealing with that. And I'm saying PSPOs, and then I've just heard, oh, PSPOs don't work, you know, they're useless at this. Well, in which case, we need a review. Come back, less than a year, let's have a decent piece of legislation that fits the facts, not the virtue signalling. And I can assure you that for women's rights, it seems on all sides, for women's rights, it seems important to me we take this seriously and not just do it as a political act either way.
Trumpet.